Vita means life, and no one takes that more literally than the homebrew scene. And I've covered the Vita a few times now in the past, mostly though around buying games for it, picking up the system, even somewhat hacking the device and what you can do there. But there's something that's continued to happen over the last several years, and it's kind of ramped up just based on other breakthroughs that have happened, and that's porting games to the Vita. It's almost like the system that people will do decompilations for and then look around and be like, I wonder if the Vita can run that. Well, that's what we're going to look at here today. A few of those projects and some really cool ports for the Vita. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we're going to start today with this video sponsor, that being Tech. And tell me you don't have a bunch of just power bricks that have to be plugged in all over the place for different devices. Well, that's where Tech comes in with their new 30 Ultra charging station. This might be one of the most overkill charging setups I've used, and I mean that in the best possible way. Most chargers can't keep up when you're actually pushing your hardware. This is the Tech 30 Ultra. It's a compact desktop power station pushing up to 300 watts through a single DC port, which is kind of ridiculous for something this size. With most chargers, when you're gaming or doing anything heavy, you'll see performance drop, resulting in lower clocks and frame dips. The Tech 30 Ultra can sustain full power draw, so your laptop actually runs the way it's supposed to. You've got multiple ports, including USB-C up to 140 watts, USB-A, and the full 300 watt DC output, so you can run your laptop, phone, tablet, all at once, no problem. I really like the built-in IPS display showing real-time power usage and temperature. While it's a bright, clean display, it's not just for looks, it's genuinely useful. No more guessing if a charging block is actually pulling power, the display will just show you. Plus, it uses an AI-powered intelligent distribution system, automatically detecting connected devices and dynamically allocating output for best performance. So whether you're gaming, working, or just trying to clean up your setup, this powers basically everything on your desk. To learn more about the Tech 30 Ultra charging station, click the link down below in the description. And once again, a big shout out to Tech for sponsoring today's video. All right, first thing that should be pretty obvious, you need a hacked Vita. I think a Vita TV would also work here. I didn't test with mine, and while most of these are targeting the handheld, there are mentions of the Vita TV in some of the notes for these different ports, so you should be able to use either one. But you will need some way to store a fairly significant amount of data if you want to try out a bunch of these different ports. And that's because you need data files to go along with the application installs. So I would recommend picking up one of the SD to Vita adapters, and it just goes in the game card slot for the Vita and lets you plug in an SD card. They're very easy to get. They're all over Amazon. I'll link one down in the description as well for you. But in this case, I was able to use a 256 gigabyte micro SD card in place of the game card slot for the Vita, and it works fine. I've used it for a number of different homebrew applications on this specific Vita, so it was already set up and ready to go for me. And in this case, I fired up the Vita DB downloader. This is a way for you to get homebrew applications, or in this case, a bunch of different ports. And the list here that they have for the Vita DB downloader is very, very good. I saw it update consistently. So if you just choose ports, you'll have an entire list, and it's quite substantial. You'll be scrolling through this for a while, and while I would say 80% of the games are here, there are still a few that you may have to look to GitHub on a PC or something to download and transfer over. But for the most part, the different ports I'm going to talk about here today were indeed in this list over on Vita DB Downloader. Now, as you go through, you'll see some of them have also updated, and it'll tell you it's outdated. So if you have one installed and it says outdated, you go there, you pick it, and it will just go ahead and update for you automatically. So I went through and picked out a few of these and then started seeking out some of the different data files, which you have to also make sure your folder structure is correct, specifically the naming for that folder. And some of the data files range from 10 to 15 megabytes. Maybe if you need a ROM file, for example, for a decompilation that's been ported, but you may need several gigabytes, for some of the larger games. So keep that in mind. It's definitely going to come down to which games you necessarily want to explore here. But with that said, let's go ahead and look through some of the ports. And the most popular one is GTA San Andreas. If you look at any of the lists and you sort by downloads, that's what's at the top. But I was kind of interested in GTA Chinatown Wars. And what you're going to see here through a number of these are that the Android versions of these games have been ported over to the Vita. So in this case with Chinatown Wars, it still has some of the functionality of, say, the touchscreen. So Chinatown Wars is a little different because it goes back to the older days of GTA where it's sort of this top-down perspective, the isometric view. But the art style, the character designs, it's all so different looking for what we're used to with GTA. And to me, it's kind of it's such an interesting almost callback for Grand Theft Auto. So this is a game I unfortunately have not spent as much time with just compared to all the other Grand Theft Auto games because when it first released on the DS, there were a bunch of other GTA games that most of us were playing at the time. It kind of flew under the radar for a while until I eventually did go back and check it out there on the DS. But here, it actually runs pretty well, and it does still utilize a touchscreen for doing things like breaking into cars where you got to use a screwdriver and turn it. So this is one that I would be quite interested actually in following up here with on the Vita. I did try out Simpsons Hit and Run, and it's just fun seeing these games from that PS2 GameCube era being ported over to something like the Vita. And this one in particular is based on source code that leaked out like 5 years ago, and it works very well on the Vita. Pretty solid frame rate here, and it has the cutscenes are still intact. That comes down to apparently the data files that you find. And again, people are going to be looking for these data files and trying to figure out where the internet has a nice archive out there, right, that you can check out. Or if you just search on Google, most likely you'll see Reddit threads pop up where people are just listing the data files. So fortunately, it's pretty easy to find them online. The only issue I really saw here was that at one point their like textures were not loading correctly while I was driving around. Made it pretty difficult there, at least for that one mission. I wasn't able to really replicate it beyond that though. So I would say this is a pretty good version of the game to play on your Vita. And to me, it shows what could have been. Like it I can't believe we don't have a remaster of this game yet. I don't know, the trademark rights holders, whatever. Somebody's got to figure this out because I'm sitting here watching it play on the Vita really well. So I can only imagine what kind of a game we could see on newer hardware, whether it's with the Switch 2 or the PS5 or Xbox Series, whatever. So somebody's got to get on this. We did have Star Fox that got decompiled and was getting ported all over the place. I've seen it on PC and like ultra widescreen, but it has also made its way over to the Vita, and this is under code name or the project name Starship. It's picked up a ton of interest, and this is a really good version of the game running on the Vita. It looks much cleaner than the N64, and I know we've seen N64 emulation on a number of different devices. It can be kind of sketchy depending on the hardware for that handheld, even some of the newer ones. So seeing this running it at this kind of quality is really, really cool. The frame rate is at 30. You can play around with the settings. You press select and it brings up an entire options menu at the top that you can just use the touch screen and go through. You can move it up to 60. I tried it, but there were some weird audio issues and it didn't hold at 60 while I was playing. So I turned it back down to 30 and it was perfectly fine there. Great game. Awesome version here on the Vita. Fully recommend it. Here's a fun discovery. Doom RPG. So I had not played this game and I looked further into it and it kind of makes sense considering it was a mobile phone game, like on Java phones. Think about that. Back in 2005. That's when it came out, right? And it got a ton of praise. It won 2005 Mobile Game of the Year, apparently, when I was looking into this. And, you know, as I started up, I go, wait a minute, this is a first-person turn-based RPG based on the Doom universe. So you move around, and I guess it's like a first-person tactics-based RPG. You move around in a grid, and so as you move, enemies will also take turns when you guys sync up or lock eyes almost in a room. And you can, of course, fire guns. They'll attack you, and you'll level up. Like, there's different items. I'm running around with a fire extinguisher. That's a whole aspect of the game. So this is very, very interesting. I was not expecting for this to be like good. So I'm going to be playing this actually, I think all the way through. And there's even a sequel that was also ported over to the Vita. So I grabbed that as well for when I finish this one. Oh yeah. Do you remember the Conduit back on the Wii? There was an Android version that was also released. That was in 2013. And again, the nice thing about the Vita, Android games seem to port over pretty well to the system. So it looks good in terms of visuals. Like it's a very clean looking game, but there are times where yes, the frame rate does dip, especially in the second level when there are a bunch of enemies on screens and explosions. but for the most part, it runs well. And the touchscreen is used in kind of an awkward way where it's for meleeing enemies. So you have to take your right thumb off of the right stick, which is what you use to look around with, and then tap the screen to punch. So that was kind of an outlier for what is otherwise fine in terms of controls. You do have limited movement on the sticks, and that was something that the Vita isn't necessarily made well for, or more precise first-person shooters. This game, though, has insane auto aim. Like, it grabs the cursor from like halfway across the screen to throw it on an enemy. So it kind of meets you halfway there. There is a store tab in the pause menu, and it's just a cheat menu. So you can turn on invincibility, one-shot kills, the whole thing. Sometimes ports happen because the community just wants to see if it can be done. Like, it's like, can the Vita run Morrowind? And there is an entire project that's been running, OpenMW, and this is just moving Morrowind to different systems. And it did pop up here on the Vita, and it's a work in progress, I guess is the best way to put it. The frame rate is rough. It runs at 15 to 30 FPS according to their GitHub page. The resolution is 640 by 368, and that's upscaled to 960 by 544. It kind of you know what it feels like? Trying to play it on the original Xbox. That kind of experience. The load times are very long, and unfortunately I experienced multiple crashes. Like, it was very difficult to get anywhere in the game because I would consistently see it crash, and then I'd have to go back and restart. I mean, I've seen this thing update twice since I was making this video, so there's definitely work being put into it to, I guess, get it into a better state. And right now, it just feels like a port that's too big for the system. But hey, it could get better over time. It's just, I don't know if I would download this one expecting like a 1.0 experience right now on the Vita. And finally, I had to look at Ship of Harkanian, and this is Ocarina of Time when it was decompiled, and then of course they're then porting it to all different kinds of systems and doing some really impressive stuff with the game. And so here we are now with it being moved over to the Vita, the port station at this point, for all kinds of different projects. But it looks much, much sharper here because of the work that's been done prior to getting moved over to the Vita. So it has full enhancements that are available. Again, you press select similar to Star Fox, and you'll have all kinds of different options at the top that you can check out, play around with, do different things when it comes to even the controls. I went through the enhancements and just put on enhanced to see, and yeah, it did things in the game, even like make it so Link can climb up of walls and stuff much, much faster. I mean, he like bolts up any of the vine walls, for example, in the beginning dungeon here. And the C buttons, they have them mapped to the right stick. It's fine. It's still better to press, you know, a button to activate, say, your slingshot, but it at least works here well enough. You can also use the D-pad for mapping items, and that does feel more like button presses than obviously, but this is a really, really good port. It's been a good port for a while to all the different platforms they've put it on, but here on the Vita, significantly better than attempting, say, emulating through an M64, an N64 emulator or something. So, good stuff. Definitely recommend this one if you want to see, yes, The Legend of Zelda running on the PlayStation Vita. And hey, I said at the beginning of the video, Vita means life, and the homebrew community, they mean it here with this. And it's fun to see the Vita still get this kind of attention, just ports getting thrown at it, honestly, just to see if it can run it. And the Vita standing up to that challenge, I will say. When you look at the specs for the system, it's not going to blow you away, but it's still a device that I think many people look at as like the last true handheld, we'll say. And it's a system that still feels current now in 2026, just based on the design and even the OLED display. Yes, an early OLED screen, but still an OLED screen that went into that Vita 1000. Even the newer slim one with the LCD still feels really good to use. So I recommend checking it out here. It's definitely worth, certainly now with it being viewed as legacy, to hack the system and really just kind of explore that world. But the amount of homebrew and ports is incredible here. So definitely worth checking out if you already have a hacked system. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. And if there are any ports that you've tried on the Vita, which ones do you recommend? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.